I'm tired and weary, but I'll still soldier on and right on until the end of the road. I will never succumb to the death of freedom and liberty in my native land. But having sat through all of the parliamentary proceedings of the passage of the Terrorism Act, having interviewed the Honourable Craig Murray, for example, the British ambassador arrested at Edinburgh Airport under terrorism legislation, having interviewed Richard Medhurst, Kit Clarenberg, and others who have faced the very same as I and my good wife Gayatri faced at Gatwick Airport yesterday morning, I can only say that up close and personal and in real life, it's way, way more ugly than it ever seemed before. To hear the words spoken by an armed policeman, his jacket off so you can gaze at his sidearm, that you are not under arrest, but you are not free to leave. To hear the words spoken, you do not have the right to remain silent. To hear the words spoken, that if you do not comply and cooperate and answer any and all of my questions, you will be automatically committing an offence under the Act. That's when I really knew that liberty in England, in Britain, in this once proud democratic country, a country that for many centuries boasted of the Magna Carta, many centuries boasted of its reasonableness, of its moderate nature, and castigated all others around the globe for falling short of our standards. That's when I knew that we as a country are in serious trouble.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to the 25th episode of Cold War 2.0 with our dear friend, Dr. Tarik, Cyril, Amar. Today, we are going to expose Israel's latest propaganda push and how Netanyahu is trying to enlist social media influencers to wage its information war. Dear Tarik, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I wanted to play this video at the beginning for our audience. First of all, hello to everyone who joined us, whether watching this on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Ganjin World. And special thanks to our dear friend with Access for moderating the live chat. I came from a semi-vacation, and it's been 3 long weeks. So this is going to be now the beginning of a few weeks. Every day, guys, I'm going to do live streamings between Monday and Friday. And as you may know, George Galloway has returned from Moscow. He attended a conference there, and upon arriving in London, he was detained by the police under the Terrorism Act. And he is not the first one, and he's not going to be the last one who was detained. And the funny thing is that you don't have the right to stay silent when they are interrogating you and they're sucking the data of your electronics. They're going to compromise your sources, and they're going to do lots of things, and they probably charge you with serious offenses according to the British law. And now imagine if the British government succeeds in imposing the digital IDs, which will link your social media platforms into your digital ID, which means everything you say, everything you write, and probably in the future, everything you think in the bathroom, it will be recorded, and then you will be prosecuted accordingly. So this is a really, really dangerous scenario, in my opinion, and I wanted to bring the attention of this issue to our dear audience before we start our conversation. Today we're going to focus mostly on...
Can I add one thing?
Yes,
Can I add
please.
one thing? Because I've also, I've known about the so-called Terrorism Act, the way it has been used against journalists, against Kit Clarenberg, now against Galloway, Richie Medhurst. This Terrorism Act isn't about terrorism, right? Let's be very, very, very clear here. It's about controlling public discourse in an extremely authoritarian manner. And I think what we could hear from what George Galloway was depicting there, the methods they employ cannot be squared with any normal understanding of rule of law. You know, a situation where a police officer tells you you're not under arrest, but you can't leave. That's a problem. A situation where you're told you cannot not answer is an enormous problem. Obviously, this is authoritarian policing, and we would not usually expect that, except, I mean, I'm a skeptic, and I know that the West is extremely authoritarian too, if under a mask, and there it comes off, the mask, right? But the thing I wanted to add to what you were saying, it's not only, in quotation marks, digital ID, it's that it involves Palantir, which is, of course, a company that, among other things, makes its money by providing, again, among other things that I consider criminal, highly effective tools to Israel while it's committing genocide. And who is also involved? Tony Blair and his famous so-called foundation, which is, of course, basically a mercenary racket peddling power. This is sinister stuff. And if we don't learn to defend ourselves, they really just, we will be in such deep something.
Yesterday I was asking myself this question: are we even able to defend ourselves against such strong force like the Palantir, like the forces trying to impose the digital ID? Is it enough to say no to such concepts?
No, it will take much more than that. But people have always, in the end, been able to defend themselves. You know, I mean, I don't buy into the arrogance of Peter Thiel and his accomplices. You know, they feel that they are undefeatable. But of course, history will prove them wrong. The question is how much damage they do before that happens, and it might be a lot.
Yeah. The other day, Palantir CEO and I think Karp, they were meeting with also the Israeli president, which is, and he says he's biased in favor of Israel. I think those are very strong
indications. Not biased, he's an accomplice. In my view, he belongs in the Hague. I think he's an accomplice in genocide. I think he's literally an accomplice. But anyhow, you wanted to raise another issue. I'm sorry, I've interrupted.
No, at the beginning, we will speak more about this issue, but at the beginning, let's summarize what happened in Moldova. I'm not an expert on Moldova. You watched this. In my opinion, what I have read now in the press, that the final results came and the ruling party of Action and Solidarity PAS, they have won the general election in Moldova. But according to an MSN article, to secure this victory, President Maya Sandu seems to have taken a page out of the, quote, managed democracy, Kremlin's playbook. Only 48 hours before the vote, two of the leading pro-Russian parties were excluded from the race on campaign funding irregularities. If, dear Tarik, Moldova's pro-EU government secured victory through what critics call managed democracy, how different is this model from the Kremlin-style system it claims to oppose?
Look, I mean, I know the article you're talking about, and it was written by Ben Aris, and he's quoting Leonid Rogozin, two guys I have a lot of sympathy for, but they're sometimes a little tiring in that whenever they see something that is terribly amiss with us here in the West, the first thing they say is, well, it's as bad as Russia. So I get their point. Russia is not a functioning democracy. It would be naive to say that. It's a country that has, look, in my view, I've said this before, I think, on your show, there are no democracies in this world. I really literally consider democracy an unrealized utopia. And we could go into that, but I don't want to bore you. But of course, they have a certain point in that certain methods of shaping the outcomes of elections, dominating public space, dominating public narratives, excluding critics. Yes, you can find them in Russia as well as in many, many other countries, including, of course, the USA. But what I find annoying is that Russia is always being set up as this weird standard by which to measure, how bad things have got. And Russia is by far not the worst, right? Russia is by far not the worst. So why is always Russia the standard, right? We could as well say, certain things that happen in Russia are as bad as in Moldova, Look, it's as bad as Moldova, right? So let's forget about the Russia angle for a moment. The comparison is actually not needed. What you can see very clearly in the Moldovan case is that they have elections, but these elections are now extremely manipulated. They're manipulated by a combination of Moldovan authorities under President Maya Sandu, who of course used to work either for the IMF or for the World Bank. So she's a classical globalist cadre, like really textbook case. And of course the EU. The EU has boasted that they sent what they called rapid reaction teams to Moldova. And we see on the surface what was going on. We see that, for instance, those Moldovans who live abroad, and 15% of Moldovans live abroad, those who live in the West had hundreds of opportunities to vote. Those who live in Russia, and that's a third of them, for them they opened two places to vote in all of Russia. And of course, this is done on purpose because they know that the Moldovans who live in Russia and who are citizens like everybody else and have every right to vote are more likely to vote against Sandu because they don't like her, not because they live in Russia. And so they exclude them. They manipulate this, right? They also manipulated it by making it extremely hard for people from Transnistria to vote. Now, this is complicated because Transnistria is in some ways a breakaway part of Moldova, but they have a right to vote. They do have a right to vote, and many of them want to vote, and they didn't let them, essentially. They created artificial obstacles at bridges. They created artificial scarcity, again, of precincts where they could vote. All sorts of dirty games were absolutely in play. We had Pavel Durov, founder and owner of Telegram, coming out on the day of the election and explicitly describing how the French secret services months ago had approached him to massively manipulate Telegram channels to damage the opposition to Maya Sandu in Moldova. And Durov was very explicit. If you read what he actually said, he said, look, the first list of channels they gave us, we could see those were really a bit weird, and we actually took them down. But then they gave us a second list. And the vast majority of those on the second list were totally legitimate. The only thing that was, in quotation marks, wrong with them, apparently, was that they didn't like the government, right?
Yes.
And they did this by blackmailing Durov, by hinting that they could help him with judicial trouble he had at the time, or still has maybe, in France. Well, an extremely dirty maneuver, right? We could go on and on and on, but this whole situation in Moldova, it is very clear these were extremely dirty elections, extremely dirty, textbook dirty, right? There's nothing here to celebrate. And they were conducted by us, by the EU, by the famous, the garden in the jungle, the famous EU with its values. That's what they do when they feel like it. They have, of course, done very similar and even more brutal things in Romania. And as I don't tire of saying, people think this is only happening sort of in the East, right? Moldova is a candidate, Romania is a young member, as it were, but it's also happening at the core. It's happening at the core. If you look at what happened to the BSW in Germany, how they were most likely unfairly excluded from parliament, that's a massive breach of good faith, to say the very, very, very least. And it's not been corrected yet. If you look at what Macron did in 2024, when he first called elections, he himself in France, and then when the result came in, he abused, there's no other word, he abused his presidential powers to essentially say, I completely ignore the result, right? He could have charged either the Rassemblement National with forming a government or the bloc of the left. Those two would have made sense by the result, right? That choice he did have. I give him that. But he charged the middle, where there was nothing left. He charged the losers. And that is one of the reasons why France can't escape a permanent political crisis since then. Because the president has decided that the will of the voters, for which he himself asked, doesn't matter. He just gives the government to somebody else, right? So if you look at this in a broader perspective, it's not only that they're going after the media, that they're going after alternative media, they are actually going after elections, and not only, as it were, on the eastern fringe, right? So Moldova belongs in a big context. And I want to read, before I stop talking, which I will in a second, I want to read you two interesting statements I found today. One is by Donald Tusk, the president, the very lame duck president of Poland. And you know what he had to say about the election in Moldova once it was over? He called
it on X?
He called it, no, it was somewhere else. I found it in an article where it was quoted. A good lesson for us all. A good lesson for us all. Isn't that interesting? Right?
Wow.
Tusk is really not bright. He's actually a very mediocre intellect. And so he probably doesn't even hear how weird that sounds. By chance, he's expressed something.
Wow.
He's sort of caught the sinister vibe of the whole thing. But it gets better. Here you have Petr Fiala from Czechia, from the Czech Republic, right? And he's just now facing a challenge also from a populist, a right-wing populist called Babiš, Andrej Babiš. And what does Fiala say? This was amazing. It was really brutal. Great news from Moldova. And then he addressed his own Czech population. Please come to the polls and don't let the country fall to Russian collaborators.
Wow.
So you see what he's doing, right? He has learned that the way you can always defeat your opponent in the European Union is if you successfully stigmatize them, label them as a Russian collaborator. And once you have done that, you cannot lose, because even if you lose, elections will be annulled, your superior opponent will somehow be excluded, and if nothing else helps, they will do it again, and Kaja Kallas sends another rapid reaction team. This is where we are now. They're damaging democracy, what little we have left, massively again.
Tarik, this is not a political question. This is more like a social question. And that is, at the beginning, let's say this year, past year, probably next year or 2 years from now, probably this type of narrative or the government, let's say, push against the Russian collaborators in Europe may on the surface work. But a few years later, do you think that the people, I'm talking about the people in Moldova, in Romania, in Germany, and elsewhere, would buy into this narrative that this is a Russian interference and take the issue in their hands? You know, like this could lead into violence in these countries by the people, right?
Look, I'm not going to say anything about violence. Who knows who listens, right? And wants to misunderstand us on purpose.
I'm not calling for violence, but just on a social level, people would say, if we vote and our votes do not count, then we will take the issue in our hands. As a historian,
right? As a historian, and it doesn't take to be trained as a historian, honestly. It just takes common sense. When you demonstrate to people that you're taking away the tiny little bit of political choice they still have, it's really not a lot already. You, of course, make them so disillusioned with the system as a whole that they will, in one way or the other, rebel. That's inevitable. That's actually psychologically normal, right? If you begin to understand that somebody is cheating you on a massive scale, you won't just cooperate forever with that person or that institution, right? And so, yes, I don't think they can actually control it this way. But you have to understand that people like Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, who were instrumental, I think, in doing this to Moldova, Ursula von der Leyen is megalomaniac. I literally think that. I think she has a God complex, a very disturbed personality. And that, of course, means she doesn't see reality objectively. And Kaja Kallas is intellectually extremely limited. That she cannot, it doesn't even take a particular psychosis for her. She's just not smart enough to understand a lot. And so both of them have ways in which what we see, and which I think is obvious and a lot of other people see, they would actually miss that. They would not see that what they're doing here is a dead end, even from their own perspective, that it cannot work forever. That every time they're doing this, they're doing it in Romania, they're doing it in a way in France, although the French did it on their own, it's just Macron. They have sort of done it in Germany to the BSW, frankly, that every time they're doing it, they are pushing people away from the political system that they claim they want to preserve and defend. It's them. It's them. It's not the Russians who delegitimize our political systems.
Yes. Some people say, Tarik, it's not voting or acceptance, it's force now. Douglas
I know it's
says,
not voting. I agree.
Yeah,
but
Douglas says
what we're discussing here is formal voting. If the point of the comment is that this is no longer a genuine election, well, I endorse that. It's not a genuine election. No, it's manipulated to an extent that it's no longer authentic. It can't count as that. It's some form of political process, but not a genuine election. No, I'm sorry.
As Douglas says, unelected officials fixing artificial democracy. Now, let's move Tarik to the Israeli Hasbara tactics, which is the main topic of today's stream. I would like to play the video of Benjamin Netanyahu when he met with American influencers.
Christian influencers. He said, he talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke right, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're but they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. You know, the weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay, and you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, you know, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Eylon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight, okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends or those who could be our Jewish our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpart? Yes.
So, when a sitting prime minister wanted by the ICC for war crimes openly calls TikTok and X the most important weapons to defend Israel's policies, does this not reveal how propaganda and influencer manipulation are being normalized, basically as tools of state warfare? And what does it say about the complicity of these Western tech companies, right?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. He's an internationally wanted criminal, and the crimes include war crimes and crimes against humanity, and some of the worst. I mean, these are the lists of crimes, and he hits some of the worst spots, right? And let's add that it's for political reasons that he wasn't officially charged with genocide, right? I mean, de facto, he's a genocider who has been charged only, in quotation marks, only for war crimes and crimes against humanity, but he should be charged for genocide as well. We all know this, right? This is Netanyahu. And he sits there and he's talking to a group, a gaggle of a pack, I'm tempted to say, of American influencers, of mercenary influencers who are ready to sell themselves to whoever, including to this figure. And yes, you're right. It tells us something about, I would call it the shamelessness, right? The shamelessness of this type of propaganda and influence operation. But I would maybe make one caveat, which is that I do still think that Israel is a special case in a very bad way. I would think that others who would like to exert hidden influence usually would do that in a hidden way. And let's not forget, Israel, of course, has been concealing its influence for decades. And it's also exerting massive concealed influence, right? What has happened here is that he has allowed us in a very brazen way to peek into how they think, right? But of course, there's much, much more going on, and they don't allow us to see it in the same way. But Israel, I think what has happened also is that they've had it so easy for so long in the West, and especially in the United States, but other cases are not much better. The UK isn't better, Germany isn't better. They've had it so easy for so long that people like Netanyahu have lost any inhibitions, right?
Yes.
He will literally come to the USA and talk openly about how he, a foreigner, intends to influence American citizens on behalf of a foreign country, which actually is legally liable, right? And to do this without declaring it is also legally liable. But all of these rules don't count for Israel, and the Israelis have gotten used to this. Look, we have the Sumud flotilla on its way right now, right? The Israelis have already labeled them Hamas, which is, of course, complete nonsense, absolute nonsense. But the practical side of that is when Israelis say Hamas, what they're really saying is we are going to kill you soon. That's what they're saying. They're saying we are preparing the ground to kill you whenever we like, we the Israelis, right? So if the Sumud flotilla should be attacked, as they attacked the flotilla, I think, 10 years ago and killed several people, right? If the Sumud flotilla should be attacked, and if they murder a lot of people again, the Israelis think they will get away with it, and they probably will. Because we live in a world in which we have tested this now for 2 years. Israel is literally allowed to get away with genocide. They're allowed to get away with systematic murder and assassination programs, not only in the region, but around the world. Israel is allowed to do this. They're allowed to buy themselves influence. They're allowed to pump millions, and actually, I think in the end, billions of money into manipulating the populations of other states, which is a direct attack on their sovereignty and whatever democracy they have. All of this Israel can do. We don't really know how this happened and why that is the case. We know that everybody who names it will immediately be smeared as an anti-Semite. I understand that, but I also know it's a ridiculous smear. This has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. In fact, if anybody really promotes anti-Semitism, it is Netanyahu and people like him, right? We will probably talk about this. So I think you're right. What this shows is that they have lost all shame. They've never had shame, but they've lost all tactical inhibitions too, because they never face actual sanctions for their behavior. Never.
To my memory, Tarik, this is the first time Israeli officials talk about their influence operations basically on American soil like this publicly. Like it used to be in, behind closed doors.
And not just any official, the boss,
the prime minister
himself.
There is the reason why he recorded this and posted this on social media platforms. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out why he did that.
But I don't think that, I think there is a reason, but I think I don't think it's a smart reason. Right? Those are two different things, right? I don't think that Netanyahu is playing four-dimensional chess. And he somehow knows that this behavior in the end will be advantageous to them. I think he's just extremely arrogant by now. And I think he really believes he can do all of this and nothing will ever backfire.
Yes.
He's also trying to push the spectrum of what is allowed. He's trying to habituate people to accepting this. But when you look at the echo to this particular clip, right, which many people have seen, it is vastly negative. There are a lot of Americans who don't want this anymore. And I think Netanyahu is completely underestimating how much traction his type of Israeli has already lost, and Israel has lost, and he is overestimating how much one can simply buy. He's overestimating that very badly. He apparently thinks, and consider him, he's also a very old guy. He's actually not with it, frankly. And it seems he has this sort of magic wand understanding of social media where, oh, there's this TikTok gadget and it's like a magic thing. If I buy it, then I can use it any way I want and it's always going to work. And of course, it's not true. What he's doing, he's actually discrediting TikTok to a lot of people, right? He's also proving once again that the American government routinely lies to its citizens. Because after all, the story about having to wrench away the US TikTok version from the Chinese was allegedly that they had to be defended against Chinese influence, right?
Yes.
And now it's being bought. It's not actually officially being bought by Israel. It's being bought, including by a lot of Jewish millionaires and billionaires actually in America. And there comes the head of Israel and says, this is us. We own this now. So how is that for promoting an anti-Semitic narrative? What Netanyahu just has said is that when a Jewish billionaire, Larry Ellison in this case is the most important one, buys an asset in the United States, it actually belongs to me, the head of Israel, to do with it whatever I want. I mean, if you couldn't invent it better.
It's like a big mafia.
If you were an anti-Semite, it's a textbook stereotype, and he's living up to it. It's insane. So I don't think that Netanyahu is smart here. I think he's just incredibly arrogant.
Or maybe he's doing it on purpose. They thrive on anti-Semitism. He is probably provoking many Americans into this line of thinking. You know, like if he's basically sending a message that all these billionaires who invested into TikTok basically belong to me, I'm their boss, right? It means that he's sending the message that we work as a clan. Our billionaires belong to me too.
He is actually promoting an anti-Semitic way of thinking himself. But if he thinks, let's assume, right, if this hypothesis that he's doing that on purpose to provoke an anti-Semitic reaction, maybe. But even then, I think he's absolutely wrong, because he doesn't understand that he's playing with something he couldn't control. If he thinks, I mean, look, Netanyahu is the man who made Hamas. Let's not forget, in many ways, I mean, Hamas made itself, but Netanyahu promoted Hamas. Originally, Netanyahu wanted Hamas because he wanted to use them against other Palestinians, and he wanted to use them in this vile tactical game so that he could say, look at those extremists, right? Yeah. In the end, has this worked for him? I would say not. And it will not work for him in the future. So if Netanyahu is again trying to be very, very clever and provoke anti-Semitism, I still don't think he's smart here. I think he's deadly wrong.
You know, Tarik, I slightly disagree on one thing here, and that is the promotion of Hamas or the facilitation of Hamas receiving funds from Qatar so that they kick out the PLO from Gaza. I think it served Israel in two ways. One, it creates the illusion that this conflict is religious. If the other side is an Islamist or an Islamic, then we Jews all have to unite against an Islamic, let's say, Frankenstein. And two, if the governing power in Gaza is Hamas and we call Hamas terrorists, then there is no longer two-state solution. We kill the two-state solution, right? I think this is the path that Netanyahu has taken when they propped up Hamas in one way or another through the Qatari mediation in this case.
But I agree with you. But my argument would be, even though he got these things out of that, in the end, this will bite him back in the back. This won't work in the end. He may think it has worked, but it will actually not work in the end. I think he's playing with a fire that he can't control. Hamas isn't gone, and it will not be gone, whatever they do. They have been unable to defeat them, and they won't defeat them. It will not happen. They might be able to conduct a genocide to the end. I doubt that they can do that. They have conducted a genocide, but I don't think they will succeed in ethnically cleansing Gaza. right? I don't think they will succeed anymore. And I don't think they will destroy Hamas or what Hamas really is, even if it takes on a new name. That might happen, obviously.
Yeah, because many people think Hamas is just an organization. It's an idea. They have been trying to kill the armed struggle of the Palestinians since the 50s, 60s, 70s.
A major part of it.
And back then, the resistance against Israel was left. They were communists, socialists, nationalists, and they killed them all. So they just create a scene which is a vacuum for only the Islamic groups to operate, basically. And now they want to create a religious war in the region. But one person who was more cautious about this type of strategy was the former spokesperson of the Israeli government, I believe. His name is Eylon Levy. Eylon Levy says Israel winning its multi-front war won't matter if we emerge from this war a global pariah where the average European is convinced that Israel is worse than Nazi Germany.
When we call legitimacy a front in the war, we minimize it. There are 7 physical fronts in the war. We can win on 6 of them, lose on 1 of them, and say we still won 6 out of 7. Legitimacy is not the same. Legitimacy is the domain that underpins the rest of the war. Because if we lose the legitimacy front, then our military advantages on all the other fronts really don't matter. If we emerge from this war a global pariah where the average European is convinced that Israel is worse than Nazi Germany. And that is the goal of the information war that is being waged against us right now. To convince the average person in the West that Israel is worse than Nazi Germany. Worse because the Nazis couldn't have known any better, and the Jews really should. When we call
if Eylon Levy admits that the real fear is not losing on the battlefield, but becoming a global pariah, how sustainable is the Israeli state project that relies on silencing criticism and buying influencers rather than changing policy?
I don't think it's sustainable. The problem with Israel's strategies, right, these really evil criminal strategies, I don't think the problem is that they will succeed. In the end, they will fail, and it might not be that far away from a historical perspective. The problem is that while they are failing, they are doing so much damage, are murdering so many people, are destroying so many lives, are undermining so much that is still valuable in other countries. That's the problem, the enormous damage they are causing. I don't think that they will in the end prevail. I don't think so at all. But, to talk about this a little more in detail, look, when you look at this clip by him, we haven't seen the whole talk, but I am struck by the fact that in this clip, there's one thing he doesn't mention. He doesn't mention America. He says Europeans, and then he says the West.
Yes.
Right? You could say the West includes America, but he doesn't mention America the way he mentioned Europeans. And that's extremely interesting because I think he's avoiding to say what actually worries him most. When he's talking about the struggle for legitimacy, you have to, I think, remember, and I think he knows this, he's an evil, evil man. But I think he understands that the one society Israel cannot afford to lose control of is the United States. The United States, they cannot lose. If Israel were cut off from United States intelligence, military, financial, diplomatic, political, ideological, media, you name it, support, which is enormous, Israel would not survive. This not in this form. We are not talking about ethnic cleansing, again, for people who love to misunderstand things. We are talking about a state. This state wouldn't survive. The way Nazi Germany didn't survive. Although nobody in the end ethnically cleansed the Germans, at least not in Germany, right? So Israel would not survive without the United States, and I think the real worry is the United States. Europe, I think they're mostly laughing about. They probably need the UK. They love having a handle on the UK, and it's enormously powerful. There's a reason why the UK is still flying spy planes for them and probably doing worse things, even worse, special forces on the ground and so on. They love having control over Germany, right? But the United States is the one thing they can absolutely cannot afford to lose. And they know this. They know this.
Yes.
So what I find interesting here is that, think about the context. We've just seen the assassination of Charlie Kirk, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that Charlie Kirk, with all his very peculiar opinions, which I mostly don't share, but I'm not here to bash Charlie Kirk, we know that he was escaping Israeli control. I mean, yes. Max Blumenthal has done excellent work on it, right? He's written about this, he's talked about it at length. And what he has shown us very empirically, very concretely, is the aggressiveness and the extent of Israeli control over Charlie Kirk personally, really personally. And he has shown us that he was beginning to rebel, that he was really beginning to rebel, and they could see it. And they started putting enormous pressure on him. And Blumenthal, in the end, says, we don't know who killed him, right? We know, but we don't, right?
Yeah.
And it may very well be that. What?
Did you see
but here's the point.
Microphone theory?
The what?
The microphone theory of the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
No.
So there is a serious investigation which I watched that the microphone of Charlie Kirk has exploded, just like the pagers exploded in Lebanon.
Yeah. Look, Kevork, I hadn't heard that yet. I missed that. But what I find extremely interesting is that in the United States, a lot of people on the right, especially young people on the right, believe that Charlie Kirk was murdered by Israel because to them it's very plausible. And I agree with them, not on the fact, because I don't know the fact, but I agree with them on the plausibility. The way Israel exerts power, the way Israel handled things, the way they had motive, yes, it would be a plausible version that they murdered him as well. But we don't know. But we don't even have to know. What we have to know is that this particular murder has led to a wave of criticism of Israel on the right. Whoever did it, people sort of clustered around it, and it became a catalyst for articulating on the right in America that they've had enough. That they've had enough, but of a foreign government reaching out to America and trying to really manipulate it massively and taking away their sovereignty, which is very really happening in their case and in others as well. So that is just one example. I'm giving it because I think it illustrates that with all its technical know-how, with all its extreme manipulativeness, with all its ruthlessness, Israel just has no limits. They do whatever they like, right? With all its impunity, Israel's grip is slipping. And we see this, of course, in opinion polls as well. I've just seen some fresh ones, right? So Eylon Levy has every reason to be worried, and I love it. I love it. The sooner their legitimacy, they don't have actual legitimacy, but the thing that he considers legitimacy, their reach, their hold over our public spheres, over our imagination, over our mainstream media, the sooner that breaks down, the better. It has to go finally. This is a criminal regime.
I just want to explain this theory, which I don't 100% endorse or believe in, but it is believable, what I watched, and this was on several American podcasts, and one of them was showing a very close-up video, which recently was posted of the conversation and the moment he was killed, basically. And it is very plausible that there was someone in the audience, and he, at the second of the explosion or the firing or whatever, when he moved his t-shirt like this, and between his movement and the explosion, there was quarter of a second. And then he runs into Charlie Kirk, and one of his bodyguards lays on Charlie Kirk, takes something, gives it to him, and this guy runs away from the scene. Like, it was something that he picked from the floor and he ran away, and he has never been seen afterwards, because they were all wearing their sunglasses and they all looked like Israeli Mossad operatives anyhow, because his security team apparently were Israeli. So whoever had access in this, I mean, the theory makes sense. I could also post in the comments for the people to read it, but 1 hour after Charlie Kirk was killed, 1 hour after that, his replacement was already ready. And they're pushing, and
he was laughing.
Yeah,
and he was grinning all over his face.
This is the guy that they're pushing nowadays. 1 hour after Charlie Kirk was pronounced dead. I don't know how this name is real. Brilliant Holy Hand.
I call him Brill Cream.
Appeared on Fox News, beaming ear to ear. It felt almost as if he had been prepared in advance to step into Charlie's shoes. Am I reading this wrong? I mean,
he's definitely not shocked. He's not shocked. He's beaming. He's beaming.
and he was right away a few days later on the Daily Wire show. And as you see, this guy, guys, he's now, I just want to show you this video. Very fake. There is nothing authentic about him. I don't think he will replace Charlie Kirk in any way. Not that I agree with Charlie Kirk, but at least he had the character.
What's up, America? Brian Holly here, about 30,000 feet up. We are on the way to Arkansas. So everybody in line.
So basically, this guy is daddy's guy. He has he's been on a private jet going to somewhere to speak. Daddy's jet, and his daddy is also in. He's a multimillionaire. So I don't think this will ring a good bell among the conservatives. And this time is over in the U.S. bringing such personalities and pushing him as an opinion leader. He has no character, no leadership, and no even skills in delivering the ideas.
There's no charisma. You can see it. Charisma is a gift. Some people have it, and he doesn't have it. You can see it immediately. There's absolutely no charisma.
Exactly.
No aura, nothing there.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I received several comments the other day after our last stream with our dear friend Tarik in the comments below, and they say thank you so much for reminding us that Tarik is publishing on his Substack, and our friend Tarik is giving us always a special offer. If you subscribe to his Substack, you will get 20% off on new annual subscriptions, and this is valid until the end of the 1st of October. The link is scrolling on the screen and also is in the description below. You can simply click it and subscribe to his work. Tarik, there is the ADL's Jonathan Greenblatt. I want to show you this this video because this is also shows the gravity of the issue.
Stopped playing defense and have moved to offense. You see this in our focus on the courts. In the past 12 months, ADL's filed more lawsuits than the prior 112 years against extremist groups, elite universities, public companies, school districts, and state sponsors of terror. We've launched innovative products to intercept anti-Semitism before it takes root, whether in the boardroom or in chat rooms, large language models or academic associations, in Wikipedia entries or WhatsApp chats. This work matters, not just for the Jewish people, but for all of society. We stopped playing deep.
Look, I mean, I'm sorry if I can say one thing. It's striking because I had seen this before, but I hadn't realized that it's actually fundamentally very similar to Netanyahu's clip. Because he is another major Zionist leader who is basically spitting in our face. He's telling us what they're doing. He's telling us we are running a massive surveillance and censorship operation on all of you. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He's proud.
And they're doing it.
He expects us to applaud him.
Yeah, but Tarik, this is a serious provocation at a time when Israel needs desperately to regain the public opinion, especially on the right in the US. And the rise of anti-Israelism is, I haven't seen something like this in my life. Like when I showed this video of this kid trying to replace Charlie Kirk, and if you go in the comments, if you read, if you like, you know, on a sleepless night when you scroll into the comments, want to know what the people are telling, you don't find one comment.
Hey, the guy is a slime bag. He's a total slime bag, but he isn't really grown up enough to be a real slime bag yet. I mean, it's
but the anti-Israelism is serious nowadays in the US, and the people are genuinely saying there is no way back. in this.
Yeah.
We're
No, I
not going
don't
to
think so.
reconcile with the fact that Israel can have these operations on our soil.
Yeah, let me make one point maybe, and I think you totally agree with me. I'm just guessing, but I think it's also worth underlining that what Greenblatt is, of course, doing here is he's deploying a classical Zionist big lie, because he's talking about all of these things that they're censoring and destroying. And keep in mind, behind this is messing with people on a large scale, destroying careers, doing lawfare, really damaging a lot of individuals. That's what he's talking about, right? And when he's doing that, he says it's all a struggle against anti-Semitism. And let's be very clear, that's not true. That's not true. I guarantee you the vast majority, if not all the people thereafter are not even anti-Semites, they're anti-Zionists. And they're against genocide. And they are for defending the Palestinians against genocide, because all of this, people like Greenblatt label and smear as anti-Semitism. This is a standard Israeli Zionist operation of smearing and lying. And we always have to resist this. And, you know, I think it's very important to say that one reason, I think, Kevork, why they're losing their grip is that people are no longer afraid of that smear, right? They're no longer afraid that some Zionist a-hole is going to start shouting anti-Semitism, because we have all seen that they misuse that label all the time. That all they mean by that is, I want to take you out because you are not in favor of us, the Zionists, committing a genocide. That's what they really mean by that. And so people are losing the fear. They're losing the fear of the smear. And this is very, very important. But always keep in mind, when this guy says anti-Semitism, that's not what we are really talking about. He's talking about people who have the courage to stand up against Israeli Zionist fascism and its crimes.
Tarik, before I ask you the last question or the last topic, I just want to respond to a friend who says, how was your vacation, Kevork? Did you recuperate from your surgery? Are you starting the daily show from today? Yes, we're starting the daily show from today, every day, Monday to Friday. Today is exceptionally, we did it because last Friday I was on the way coming back home and I couldn't do it with our dear friend. So Tarik joined us today, and we will do it another one on Friday. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for asking. And this was a semi-vacation, and there is a plan behind it. And hopefully soon I could also share with you the plan when it is materialized. Our friend Tarik already knows behind the closed scenes, Tarik, I want to bring your attention and the attention of our friends to a new poll in Germany. And this is basically from the YouGov. 62% of Germans, including 56% of AfD voters, which is on the far right, consider Israel's actions in Gaza to constitute genocide. One of the commentators of this issue, I just wanted to let me check again this commentary, because this was hilarious. So, one of them was bashing the AfD in this case, because what the voters want basically is not what the party is implementing. And in this case, the AfD is an opposition party. Why I'm bringing the issue of of opposition? Because the government is executing the policies, but the opposition, which has to oppose the policies of the government, this is the only policy that they don't oppose when it comes to Israel-Palestine, right? So it seems that the voters are someplace, and the political party or the leadership is in somewhere else.
Yeah, look, to me as a German, right? The fact that by now, at least by now, there is a clear majority of people who recognize the genocide as a genocide is a hopeful sign, right? Of course, there's a lot of things still wrong in Germany, among other things that this majority cannot find a way to actually exert pressure on its elites. But that happens to a lot of majorities in a lot of countries. Let's be fair to the Germans there. But I find it interesting because for various reasons, and I don't think we need to go into them here, Israel has always had a particularly easy time in Germany as well, as in the UK and as in the US, but for other reasons, in making people incredibly reluctant to ever criticize Israel, ever, whatever they do. And if now we see 62% of Germans finally maybe having come to the conclusion that this is a genocide, then of course they're absolutely right. This is a genocide. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's a textbook case, as Ras Sigal, an Israeli-American genocide scholar, said a long time ago. It's a textbook case. And we could look at these statistics and we could say, look, but it's almost 40% who still can't see it. But 62% is a very powerful indicator that even in Germany, Zionist intimidation, for instance, by the Berlin police, who habitually beats people who stand up for Palestine savagely, that Zionist intimidation, even in Germany, is losing its grip. That's a good sign. It is, of course, horrible that this is only happening after Israel has already been committing a genocide for 2 years. That's horrible. But compare with the world. Imagine we would look at the statistic now and we would see, say, only 20% of Germans getting the message, seeing the reality, right? That would be even worse. That would mean nothing shakes them out of it. But 62%, that means something is moving. And we've seen, not the same figures, but we've seen the same sort of movement even in the US. Yeah. So this thing that Eylon Levy is worried about, that they're losing what he calls their legitimacy, and what I would call their stranglehold on societies outside Israel, yes, they are. And we must hope that this continues.
One person says, Tarik, your Substack is very informative. Thanks. And guys, the link is in the description below if you like to subscribe. And by the way, Tarik, this poll, there are 21% of the Gesamt, like the overall voters, say they don't know. So they don't say no. Yeah. Only 17% say no. So the 17% of the participants in this poll say no. And 21 say weiß nicht, so we don't know. We will continue this coverage for sure in the next weeks, guys. We do this show every Friday. Today is exceptional. We did it on Monday, but we will also do it on Friday, next Friday, at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. So if you like this show, the easy thing to do is just to hit the like button on this conversation, on this stream, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing here, you can become a patron. So this software has introduced a new way to support the channel, and this is the QR code. Basically, what you could do is you can scan the QR code and it sends you directly into the Patreon page if you like to support this channel, or simply click the link patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And at the end of this conversation, I would like to thank our dear friend Tarik for the amazing conversation and the insights. Habibi, thank you so much again for making time today on Monday and coming to the show. We will do it again on Friday. And thank you so much, our dear friend Red Access, for moderating the live chat. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Everyone who is watching every week and coming back to this channel to hear Tarik's insight. I appreciate every single one of you on YouTube, on Rumble, and Ganjin World. And we will see you on Friday. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.